We were the perfect family on the outside. But one trip to Miami revealed a truth so painful, I almost didn't believe my own eyes. What I found behind that hotel door changed everything. My name's Tyler. I'm 34 years old, and for the past 7 years I've been married to Emily. We built a life together that, from the outside, probably looked picture perfect: 2 wonderful kids, a cozy home, and a marriage that seemed strong. The kind of life people envy without really knowing what goes on behind closed doors. But recently, something changed. I couldn't explain it at first, just this strange feeling creeping in. Emily's always been this vibrant, magnetic woman. She's smart, incredibly beautiful, and carries herself with a confidence that can be both captivating and a little intense. She's the kind of person who never gets caught off guard, always quick with her words, always in control. Honestly, that self-assuredness was a big part of why I fell for her. She didn't let anyone walk over her. But lately, the charm she used to carry so effortlessly, it's felt different. Colder. Like it wasn't meant for me anymore. It all really started to shift around 6 months ago. The changes were subtle at first. She started staying late at the office more often. She works in real estate, so odd hours aren't exactly rare, but this was more frequent than usual. I'd ask her how her day went, and she'd just brush it off, saying it was hectic or that she had to deal with a demanding client. Those sweet little texts she used to send during the day? They started fading away. And when I'd reach out, she'd still reply, but her messages were short, detached, like she wasn't really there. At first, I told myself not to overthink it. I figured maybe we were just in a rut. After all, life gets routine after a while, right? But deep down, something didn't feel right. You ever get that heavy feeling in your gut, like something's off but you can't quite name it? I kept trying to ignore it, chalking it up to stress or maybe just a rough patch. But I started noticing how glued she was to her phone. Not just using it, but guarding it. I'd walk into the room and she'd instantly put it down, like she didn't want me seeing what was on it. She'd be smiling at something one minute, and the next she'd go blank the moment she saw me. It sounds small, but once you notice something like that, you can't unsee it. I began to feel like a guest in my own home. Even though things felt off, I kept convincing myself that it was just work pressure getting to her. Emily's always been a go-getter, driven to the point where she'd push herself to exhaustion if it meant success. I figured that ambition was wearing her down. But I was way off, I just didn't realize how far off I was. Around that time, we started talking about finally going on that family trip we'd been putting off. Emily brought up Miami, said it'd be good for all of us to take a break. Sounded perfect, honestly. A chance to hit pause, reconnect, and spend quality time with the kids away from the noise of daily life. I was genuinely looking forward to it. Our 2 little ones, Chloe and Ben, had never seen the ocean before. They lit up when we told them about the beach, already imagining sandcastles and seashells. It even seemed like Emily was getting back to her old self, smiling more, making plans, actually excited. She was more involved than she'd been in weeks. Gave me hope. Maybe this trip was what we needed to feel like us again. But then there was this weird thing: she was planning everything on her own. Usually we'd sit down together, go over the hotel options, check out places to eat. This time she'd already made decisions before I even had a chance to weigh in. She booked the hotel, picked out restaurants, even made a sightseeing schedule without really asking what I thought. And she was on her phone constantly, like something urgent was always going on. I remember one night, lying in bed beside her, I finally asked, "Hey, who are you always texting? You've barely looked up from your phone these days." She barely even turned her head. "It's just work stuff, babe. You know how it is. Clients don't stop needing things just because you're out of town." It was such a casual answer, but it didn't sit right. Still, I didn't press her. The last thing I wanted was to argue before a vacation that was supposed to bring us closer. I told myself to let it go. We ended up booking this really nice hotel right on the beachfront. Way fancier than what we usually go for, but I figured, hey, why not? Maybe a little luxury could help us reset things. At least that was what I hoped. Then came the twist. We were all packed up, ready to fly out, Chloe and Ben practically bouncing with excitement. Emily was her usual calm, graceful self, almost like she'd rehearsed every moment. But the day before the trip, I got hit with a major issue at work. I managed tech projects, and out of nowhere, one of our biggest clients had a full system crash. Of course, the timing couldn't have been worse. At first, I thought I could hand it off to one of my team members, but it quickly became clear this was something I needed to handle myself. I felt terrible. We'd been planning this for weeks, and I hated the idea of letting everyone down, especially the kids. Canceling wasn't an option, but dragging them through a delayed trip didn't feel right either. So, I sat down with Emily to talk it over. "Listen," I said, doing my best to keep my tone even, I don't want to be the reason this trip falls apart. How about you take the kids ahead as planned, and I'll catch a flight in 2 days, once this whole work mess is under control. Honestly, I expected her to be frustrated. I mean, who wouldn't be? It's not exactly great to start a family vacation without your spouse. But her response, it completely caught me off guard. That actually works out perfectly, she replied almost too fast. I'll get them settled, and by the time you arrive, everything will be running smoothly. Her ease with the change surprised me. Normally, Emily hates when our plans shift last minute, especially if it involves us not being together as a family. But this time she seemed almost relieved. Still, I tried not to read into it. I was just glad she didn't seem upset. So that was the plan. Emily and the kids would head to Miami in the morning, and I'd follow once I wrapped up the situation at work. That night, I helped double-check their suitcases, made sure they had the right documents, and even printed out the itinerary just in case. But something didn't sit right. Emily was in full-on planner mode, more than usual. She had every detail nailed down to what snacks the kids would have on the flight. Normally, I'd admire her for being so on top of things, but paired with how distant she'd been lately, it all felt off. Still, I told myself it was just the pressure I was feeling from work, nothing more. The next morning, I drove them to the airport. Chloe and Ben were bouncing in their seats, beyond excited, and Emily? She was calm. Too calm, honestly. I gave them all tight hugs before they headed into the terminal. As I drove away, the quiet of the car felt heavier than I expected. That strange tension inside me hadn't gone away, it was getting stronger. But I kept brushing it off. 2 days apart wasn't a big deal, right? I'd be joining them soon enough. Everything would be fine. Or so I told myself. 2 days later, I finally boarded my flight. I couldn't wait to get there, just to see my kids playing in the sand, feel the sun on my face, and hopefully find some peace between Emily and me. I kept picturing those family moments I'd been craving for months. When I landed in Miami, I grabbed my luggage and headed straight for the hotel. It was right on the beach, exactly the kind of place meant for relaxing. As I walked through the door of the suite, I expected laughter, a few hugs, maybe Emily coming up to me with that familiar smile. Sure enough, Chloe and Ben ran to me with open arms, their voices full of excitement, like I'd been gone for weeks, not days. We caught up for a bit, and then I casually asked, "So, how's the trip been so far? What have you guys been up to?" Ben jumped in immediately. "It's been awesome. We went swimming and had so much ice cream the first day. And the nanny came." Chloe added, her tone bright and innocent. I blinked. "The nanny?" "Yeah," she chirped. "She was super fun. She took us swimming and let us get extra sprinkles." My mind stalled for a second. A nanny? Emily never once mentioned anything about hiring someone. That wasn't like her. She always wanted to be hands-on with the kids, especially on a family vacation. Trying not to sound alarmed, I asked, "Oh? What was your mom doing while you were out swimming with the nanny?" Ben gave me a puzzled look. "She stayed in the room. She said she was tired." And that's when something snapped into place inside me. Not in an angry way, just a sudden, sinking realization. Emily had flown across the country for a family trip, only to stay behind in the hotel and hand the kids off to a stranger? It didn't line up. It didn't make sense. Still, I tried to focus on being there, being present. But the questions were creeping in fast now. Why hadn't she told me about this nanny? Why bring help on a trip that was supposed to be all about reconnecting? "So, where's Mom now?" I asked, keeping my tone steady. Chloe shrugged. "She went out. Said she had to do something but would be back soon." That gut feeling? It wasn't just nerves anymore. It was full-blown unease. There I was, sitting on the edge of a hotel bed with my kids happily chatting about swimming and ice cream, and all I could think about was what I didn't know. What Emily hadn't said. What she might be hiding. Then, just as I was lost in thought, the hotel door opened. Emily stepped in, looking freshly showered, her hair still damp, and skin glowing like she'd just come back from the spa. She smiled like everything was normal, dropped her bag by the door and leaned in to kiss my cheek. "You made it," she said cheerfully. "How was the flight?" "It was long, but I'm glad I'm finally here," I replied, trying to meet her eyes, trying to figure out what she was thinking. She looked relaxed, too relaxed. Not an ounce of guilt in her expression. No tension. Just the same cool, composed Emily she'd been before the trip. "So, what have you been up to while I was gone?" I asked lightly, my voice calm, but my heart racing, already playing back every word the kids had said about the nanny. "Oh, just spent a little time by the pool," she replied, stretching out across the couch like it was any other day. "I figured I'd sneak in a bit of relaxation before you got here." The kids were in good hands, so I wasn't too worried. I nodded slowly, trying to take that in. Chloe and Ben mentioned they went swimming with a nanny? She didn't miss a beat. Yeah, she said with a breezy smile. I thought it might be a good idea to have someone keep an eye on them for a few hours. It's been a stressful few months and I just wanted a moment to breathe, you know? I figured they'd have more fun with someone focused just on them. It sounded like a reasonable explanation on the surface. After all, parenting is exhausting and maybe she just needed a break. But it didn't feel right. We had flown all this way to be together, to reconnect, and on day one she was already handing the kids off to someone else? That's not the Emily I knew. Still, I didn't say anything. I didn't want to come off as paranoid or controlling, especially not when I had just arrived. Maybe I was reading too much into it. Well, I'm here now, I said, trying to match her smile. Let's take the kids down to the beach together. She agreed without hesitation, and soon we were packing up towels and sunscreen, helping the kids into their swimsuits. The beach was beautiful, warm breeze, soft sand under our feet, and the sky glowing orange as the sun began to dip. Chloe and Ben ran ahead, giggling as they chased each other toward the water. And for a little while things felt normal again. Emily and I walked along the shore, hand in hand, laughing with the kids and soaking in the moment. It was the kind of peace I hadn't felt in months. But even then, that question still lingered in the back of my mind. Why had she needed space on the very first day? Why didn't it feel like she missed me at all? Then came the second to last day of the trip, and just my luck, I woke up feeling awful. Head pounding, body aching, and chills running down my spine. I knew instantly I wasn't going anywhere that day. I stumbled out of bed, still in my t-shirt and shorts, trying to gather myself. The kids were already up, bouncing around like they always did, and Emily was in front of the mirror, effortlessly put together as usual. She barely glanced at me when I spoke. I'm not doing so hot, I said, leaning against the bathroom door frame. Pretty sure I've got a fever. She looked at me through the mirror, her tone cool and matter-of-fact. Yeah, you don't look great. You should stay in and rest. That's what I expected her to say. I figured she'd take the kids out for a while like she had before. But then she threw something out there I didn't see coming. I was thinking, she said, applying a touch of lip gloss, maybe we could have the nanny watch the kids for a few hours again. I'd like to get out on my own, go for a walk, maybe check out some shops or grab a drink. Even through the fog in my head, something about that didn't feel right. Again with the nanny? I was laid up, and her first instinct was to leave the kids with someone else so she could go do her own thing? I tried to keep my voice calm. Can't we just all go out together? Even if I can't do much, I can still tag along. She gave a soft sigh, like she'd already had this whole conversation in her head. Tyler, you're not well. You can't keep up with them right now, and I don't want the kids cooped up in here all day. Let me take care of it. Then why not take them out yourself? I asked. Why does it have to be the nanny? She finally turned to face me, her tone more direct. Because I want a few hours for myself. I was thinking of going to a lounge, maybe even a club, somewhere the kids obviously can't go. It's our last day here and I don't want to waste it. That stopped me cold. A club. She wanted to spend the last night of our family vacation. Alone, out somewhere completely disconnected from us? I felt anger rise in my chest. Emily, we came here together. As a family. Can't this last night be about us? She shook her head like I was the one not getting it. I've been with the kids nonstop this whole trip. I just want one night. One evening to unwind. You're sick. The kids are fine. What's the harm? What was the harm? The harm was this whole trip had been a performance. Something felt off from the beginning, and now she didn't even seem to care about spending time with me or the kids. I opened my mouth to say something honest, something raw, but I could barely keep my eyes open. Between the fever and the confusion, I didn't have the strength to start a fight I wasn't sure I could finish. I rubbed at my face trying to focus. Fine, I said quietly. If that's what you want, then go. Her face shifted slightly, softening in a way I didn't expect. Almost like she hadn't thought I'd say yes so easily. Thanks, she said quietly, slipping her purse over her shoulder. I'll only be gone a few hours. I didn't say anything. Just watched her walk out the door, the quiet click of it closing behind her echoing through the room. And as she left, that feeling I'd been trying to ignore, the one I'd been pushing down for days, it surged back stronger than ever. Something was wrong. Deep down, I knew it. That evening I started feeling a little better. The fever had eased up, and though my head was still pounding, at least I could think straight again. The kids were curled up on the bed watching cartoons, the glow of the screen lighting up their faces, giggling at some silly show while I laid back trying to rest. But no matter how hard I tried to close my eyes, I couldn't relax. Not fully. There was this noise, muffled at first, then louder, coming from the room next to ours. At first, I figured it was just people partying. It's Miami, right? Probably nothing unusual. But the shouting and laughter kept getting more intense, and every thud and shriek sent a fresh spike through my skull. After everything that had happened, I had no patience left. So I got up, rubbed the tension from my temples, and stepped out into the hallway. I figured I'd politely ask them to tone it down a bit. I wasn't trying to start a scene, just a simple, reasonable request. I walked over and knocked on the door next to ours. Firm but not aggressive. After a moment, the door swung open, and standing there was a man, wrapped in nothing but a towel, his skin damp like he'd just stepped out of the shower. His eyes widened slightly when he saw me, clearly not expecting a neighborly visit. I was about to speak, just about to explain, but then I heard it. From somewhere inside that room, a woman's voice called out, "Babe, they sent up champagne. How sweet is that?" And just like that, everything stopped. I knew that voice. I would know it anywhere. It was Emily. My heart froze in my chest. For a second, my brain didn't register what was happening. I felt my hand push the man aside before I even realized what I was doing. I stepped into the room without thinking, driven by a force I can't even describe. And there she was, Emily, sitting on the bed, wearing nothing but shock on her face. Her eyes locked with mine, and it was like the entire world shattered around us. The air left my lungs. My legs felt unsteady, but somehow I stayed upright. My thoughts were a blur of confusion, fury, and heartbreak, all crashing into each other at once. "Well, Emily," I managed to say, my voice shaking with a mixture of rage and disbelief, "having a good time?" She didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stared at me wide-eyed, caught in the act with nowhere to hide. The man behind me shifted awkwardly, clearly unsure what to do now that the curtain had been pulled back on their secret. I took a shaky step forward, my voice rising. "How long? How long has this been going on, Emily?" Nothing. No answer. Just silence and guilt dripping from her eyes. I turned toward the door, the fury now boiling over into something raw and unfiltered. "Don't you come back to that room," I barked. "Don't even think about it. We're finished. This is over." I stormed out before I could break down in front of her. Back in our suite, Chloe and Ben were still watching their cartoon, completely unaware of the implosion that had just happened down the hall. I looked at them, at their innocent faces, and I knew I had to pull myself together, for them, not for her. I walked to the closet and pulled out Emily's suitcase. Every piece of her clothing, every shoe, every cosmetic bag, I threw it all into the luggage. I didn't care how neat it was. I just needed it out. Out of the room. Out of my life. Once it was all packed, I wheeled it back down the hallway to the room I'd just left. I didn't knock. I didn't say a word. I left her suitcase at the door, turned around, and walked away. I wasn't going to wait around for explanations or apologies. I didn't need to hear anything else from her. It was done. When I got back to the room, I quietly gathered our things, just mine and the kids. I found a movie they hadn't seen yet and put it on to keep them occupied while I called the front desk. I asked them to move us to another hotel. Anywhere. I just needed to get away from her. I didn't want Emily knowing where we were. I didn't want her shadow hanging over the rest of our time in Miami. This was supposed to be for us, for our family. And even if she had tried to destroy that, I wasn't going to let her ruin what was left of it for my kids. By the time we were settled into the taxi, heading toward a new hotel across town, I still hadn't said a single word about any of it to Chloe or Ben. They were in the back seat, full of energy and giggles, treating the move like a surprise adventure. Part of me was grateful they were too young to see the storm quietly building just under the surface of my skin. When we arrived at the new hotel, I took a deep breath and tried to steady myself. It was harder than I expected. My hands were still trembling, my mind still racing, but I had to keep it together, for them. They didn't need to carry the burden of what their mother had done. That wasn't theirs to hold. The next day we went to the beach. I sat in the warm sand watching them play, their laughter carried by the wind as they chased each other near the waves. And for a moment I wished I could freeze time, trap us in that one peaceful morning and never leave. No return flights, no ugly truths waiting at home. Just them and me, safe in the sunshine. But that peace didn't last. The next morning the messages started. Emily must have gone back to the hotel room and seen her bag sitting outside. She hadn't known we'd left, hadn't realized I'd moved the kids and myself somewhere she couldn't find us. First it was a few texts. "Tyler, where are you? Why are my things outside? Where are the kids?" Then the calls came, one after another. I didn't answer a single one. I couldn't. I wasn't ready to hear her voice, not after what I'd seen. Not after that hotel room. She could panic all she wanted, wonder where we were, what I was thinking, but she wasn't getting another inch of space in my head. Not anymore. She had no idea we weren't at the airport when she assumed we'd be flying home. She didn't know I had made the choice to leave her behind, just like she had left us behind the moment she opened the door to that other room. For the last 2 days of our trip, I poured all my energy into the kids. They didn't deserve the shadow of their mother's betrayal creeping into their memories of Miami. So we went to the zoo, had one too many scoops of ice cream, and I let them fall asleep every night with tired smiles and sandy feet. Meanwhile, Emily kept calling, kept texting. But I didn't respond. As far as I was concerned, she was out of our lives. Then came the day we had to fly home. I didn't know what to expect when we landed. My stomach was in knots the entire flight, even as Chloe and Ben sat beside me, giggling over their little in-flight games and asking what we'd do when we got back. I smiled and answered their questions, but inside I was bracing for something, anything. Would she be there waiting for us? Would she beg to talk? Cry? Apologize? But when we pulled into the driveway, I realized I wouldn't be getting any of that. The house was quiet. Not just quiet, strangely still. And when I opened the door, I saw why. Emily was already gone. Not completely. The furniture was still there. The walls still held echoes of our life. But her belongings, her clothes, her shoes, her toiletries, everything that marked her presence in this home was missing. I stepped inside, unsure how to feel. I had imagined being the one to tell her to leave. I'd played that moment over in my mind, telling her it was over, watching her gather her things while I made it clear she no longer belonged here. But she had taken that moment from me too. Quietly. Without a word. I walked through the rooms like I was seeing them for the first time. The closet was half empty. The bathroom shelves bare. Even the family photos that used to sit on the mantel, gone. Like she had scrubbed herself out of our lives in one quiet sweep. Chloe and Ben didn't notice. They ran past me, excited to be home, shouting about which toys they missed the most. I stood in the hallway, still stunned. How had everything changed so fast? I wanted to feel relieved. I should have. There would be no confrontation, no messy goodbye. But what I felt instead was something hollow. Like the final thread of the life I thought we had just snapped, and now all that remained was silence. The only time I'd really seen the kids confused was during those last 2 days in Miami, when we'd left the hotel. There had been moments, small ones, where their little brows furrowed, like they could tell something wasn't right. But they never asked. Maybe they were too young. Or maybe they were waiting for me to explain it first. Now that we were home, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't pretend this didn't happen. I couldn't wait around for another disaster. I had to protect them, and myself, from any more of this pain. So I did the only thing I knew how. I filed for divorce. It wasn't easy. Not even close. Walking into that office, putting my name on those divorce papers, it felt like I was cutting off a part of myself. Like something that had been stitched into my life for years was suddenly being torn away. This was the woman I had built a future with. The mother of my kids. The person I once trusted with everything I had. But after what I saw in Miami, after what she chose to do, forgiveness wasn't on the table anymore. I had to draw the line, for myself and for Chloe and Ben. After filing, I thought maybe Emily would reach out. I braced myself for a flood of messages, maybe even some half-hearted apology, or some desperate attempt to fix things. But nothing came. Not a call. Not a single text. It was like she disappeared the moment she walked out of that hotel room. The silence felt strange, unsettling. Like she had just wiped the slate clean and moved on without so much as a backward glance. At first, that silence made it harder to let go. It was surreal to think that someone I had shared so much with could vanish so completely, so easily. But with time, I realized that maybe the silence was exactly what I needed. No drama. No begging. Just space, enough to start healing. In the weeks that followed, I threw myself into being a father. That's where I placed all my energy. I took Chloe and Ben to the park after school, made pancakes for dinner just because, and turned our living room into a blanket fortress more times than I could count. I was determined to make their world feel steady, even when mine was still shaking. And slowly, day by day, I stopped thinking about Emily. Not entirely, of course. There were reminders everywhere, but the sting faded. What had once felt like a gaping wound became more like a scar. Still there, still painful when touched, but no longer raw. Then, one afternoon, I ran into someone we used to be close with. A friend who had known us both back when things were good. We chatted for a bit, and then she asked cautiously, "Have you heard where Emily ended up?" I hadn't. I hadn't asked and I hadn't gone looking. But she told me anyway. She was living with that guy. The one from Miami. Apparently, she had moved in with him almost right after the trip ended. It hit hard even though I knew I shouldn't be surprised. I kept my expression calm, told her I'd figured something like that was coming. I was doing okay, I said. The kids were doing great. But then our friend asked, eyebrows raised, "She's not seeing Chloe and Ben?" I shook my head. Not once. And that's when it truly hit me, not just what Emily had done to me but what she had done to our kids. She hadn't just left our marriage, she had walked away from her children. There were no calls. No birthday cards. Not a single effort to see them or check in. It was like she had deleted them from her life the same way she had deleted me. More friends reached out over time, each one shocked by what she had done. No one could understand it. Sure, leaving a relationship happens. People fall apart. But walking out on your own children? That was something none of them could wrap their heads around. Some of them even tried to reach out to her themselves. They wanted to hear her side, maybe get some kind of explanation. But all they got were empty justifications. She had moved on, she wanted a different life, she didn't want to be tied down anymore. It was like the woman we all thought we knew had become a stranger. It hurt. I won't pretend it didn't. Knowing she had chosen someone else, chosen that life over the family we had built, that was a kind of pain I didn't know how to explain. But even through all of that, I started to find something else. Clarity. I had the kids. We were moving forward. Slowly, maybe awkwardly at times, but we were building something new. Something grounded. And even though it wasn't the life I had imagined, it was still ours. It was still full of laughter, bedtime stories, early morning cereal spills, and all the beautiful chaos that comes with raising two little humans. Emily had made her choice. And I made mine. I chose them. And they're the only thing that matters now.